Hi everybody, my name is Deanna O'Connor and I'm the founder of the Speak Up Club. I am joined here today by my co-host, my dog. So if you hear any barking during the webinar, I apologise, but we're in an office with quite big windows and he does tend to bark at every single person that passes by. So we'll just stop for a minute and let them edit that out later if he does start, but he's been good so far. So today we're going to talk about the power of no. And this is something that I've worked on a lot in my workshops with the Speak Up Club, which was founded originally to help empower women in the workplace with more confidence and public speaking skills. And what I found is a lot of people don't like saying no and often say yes to too much and take on too much. And as a result, their quality of their work suffers and it builds up a lot of resentment within people. And sometimes they end up kind of with an outburst because of this resentment building up. So what I'm trying to achieve today with you is to learn how to say no gracefully, calmly, and assertively so that you prioritize your own needs. You don't threaten the quality of your work by taking too much on, and you learn how to kind of manage your manager in that sense, because nobody wants to say no to their boss, of course. So why do we say yes all the time? Of course, in a work situation, we don't want to say no to our boss. A lot of us are people pleasers. We want to be liked. We want people to think that we're helpful, team players. You know, you don't want to be seen in a bad light. So you automatically default to saying yes to things without really pausing to reflect. Do you have time? Do you have capacity? Do you have maybe the skills sometimes? And sometimes saying yes to something that you don't necessarily have experience in can be a good thing and you just fake it till you make it. But sometimes it can show you in a bad light if you get found out that you don't have those skills. And then on top of that, there's peer pressure. You know, we say yes to maybe social events and things like that we don't necessarily want to go to, but we feel we have to. And all of these things can really drag on our time, our personal resources, and our energy. So sometimes it's really a good thing just to learn to say no. And Brene Brown has this great saying that is, choose discomfort over resentment. And that means it's really uncomfortable saying no sometimes. It's awkward, you feel bad, you don't want to put someone else under pressure. You just feel like it's going to be easier to say yes and maybe not kind of follow through on that yes even. But you know, it's better to say no than say yes and not follow through and then be seen as someone who doesn't follow through. So actually that discomfort of saying no will stand to you, because even though it's awkward at the time, you don't build up this resentment of having too much on your plate, too much work, too many, maybe it's your partner you're saying yes to all the time and you're getting resentful towards them because, you know, you feel like you're doing a lot of the kind of heavy lifting and household stuff. So in personal or work settings, it can bubble up this resentment because you're taking on and taking on and taking on work all the time. And then it's, you know, you don't have the time for it. You can't do everything, and you certainly can't do everything well. There's this fear that everyone around you, if you say no, especially to your boss in work or to a client, they'll think you're lazy, they'll think you're selfish, you're uncooperative, not a team player. I'm sure if you think about it now and reflect what it kind of brings up in you, some of these negative connotations will come up as well. And I think that what I've seen from looking and studying other people who are good at saying no is that I don't think they're any of these things. Well, if they're a hard worker, I won't think they're lazy for sure. But I think what I can see is that there's a kind of a healthy selfishness that allows people to prioritize themselves and their needs and make sure that they produce the best quality work that they can. And I've worked a lot of my life in magazines and as an editor, and I've seen that, you know, sometimes we're on deadline, we're trying to churn stuff out, we're just trying to get stuff done for the deadline date to go to print. It's not going to be like a beautiful novel or poetry we're writing, it's just getting it done. But if you want to write a really good article, you need to take time, you need to craft it, you need to think over it, you need to write it, put it away for 3 days, come back to it. So, you know, I've watched a really good friend of mine who is an excellent writer really prioritize her work and her craft. And I think that we kind of miss out doing that sometimes when we're just trying to get as much as possible done and you're under pressure in work. So thinking of your work and your working day as a craft and really prioritizing doing it to the best of your ability means that sometimes you do need to say no to taking on too much. Paulo Coelho has this wonderful saying, and it says, when you say yes to others, make sure you're not saying no to yourself. And that is the trade-off, unfortunately, that saying yes to everybody else all the time puts what you need and you want and what you want to do best in the backseat, and means that you're constantly striving to do things for other people and not focusing on what is good for you and your work, essentially. And sometimes saying no is better for other people as well as for ourselves. So, certainly there are times in our lives when saying yes to someone else might not be in their best interest. I mean, if a child keeps asking you for sweets and you keep saying yes, you're going to rot their teeth. So if an alcoholic asks you for another drink, you're an enabler. If your dog asks you for treats all the time, and mine certainly does, then, they're going to get fat, and my dog is. So all of these things, you have to learn how to say no, even though, the dog is looking at you with his puppy dog eyes, or the toddler is having a tantrum on the supermarket floor, or whatever it is. Sometimes it's not in that person or animal's best interest for you to say yes all the time. Certainly in a work situation, spreading yourself too thinly means you're not producing your best quality work. So anything that you're currently doing, when you take on another thing, the quality of the first thing is going to suffer. You won't have as much time to spend on it. And work is a very pressurized environment these days, and we're all constantly trying to do more and be more productive. But actually, you have to set some boundaries and limits around that to be your best work self. And another time is just simply a gut feeling when the yes feels wrong. And maybe that's a moral issue, or maybe you can't quite explain it, but you just feel no. And if your gut says no, I would always encourage you to say no, because sometimes there's just a reason you haven't even figured out yet for that. And really what I think in a work sense, and I suppose most of us are here in a work capacity today, is that giving fewer things more attention means that you produce better quality work. And in the long game thinking around this, I suppose you're going to protect your reputation, your professional reputation, by producing better work. You might think in the short term you're being a team player or cooperative or a people pleaser and saying yes to your boss is a good thing. But essentially, you're overstretching yourself and you're either heading for burnout or a nervous breakdown if you keep on taking on work. So you can't work 24/7. You need to have some work-life balance, and you need to produce the best possible quality work. So at some point, you need to put up that boundary and start saying no. And in fact, I've seen in work situations, people who are strong, have that backbone, and stand up for themselves and set those boundaries. Their boss doesn't necessarily think they're lazy if they're working hard and they're producing good work. Their boss thinks that they're strong and actually respects them more for it. So it is important to set these professional boundaries. The one thing about saying no is that you have to do it gracefully. There's no point going no like a bold child. So firstly, I think we spoke a few seconds ago about how sometimes we say yes very quickly because our automatic response is to be, sure, of course I'll do that, without thinking about the ramifications of it or what it might cost us in terms of time or energy or things we have to put aside to do something. So I would always say, don't say yes or no directly straight away. Pause, reflect as long as you can. Take the most amount of time you can to give an answer and consider what the kind of opportunity cost of saying yes or no to something will be. Then be direct. As much as I say, take time, don't necessarily flip-flop around and kind of go, oh, I don't know. Say, let me have a day to think about that. Give me a minute to think about that. If you want that time to consider something, state a measured amount of time. Give a person an actual time, like, I'll get back to you tomorrow. I'll get back to you in an hour, so that they can kind of have set expectations around it as well. So be direct, give people honest answers. Obviously, I don't think that saying yes, but meaning no is a good thing. Saying, oh yeah, of course I'll do that, and then never doing that is going to be bad for your reputation. Being clear, again, using like measured time, and not giving the idea that maybe it's a yes when actually it's really a no. So being very direct and clear about it. Also firm, because people will try and push you, and you have to be firm and you have to be unwavering. So don't say no and then kind of let yourself get sucked in and help out a bit with the project you didn't really want to do. If you say no, that you're too busy, then you end up helping anyway. That shows that you weren't too busy in the first place. So if you said you're too busy, you are too busy, stay too busy. This little graph here is quite powerful, actually, if you take time to look at this afterwards, and we will send the slides around. Sometimes things in it, you'll look at it and go, oh, this person is that. I've noticed in myself that I've reacted this way. So it's kind of an assertiveness matrix, and it goes from passive, assertive to aggressive. So passive is not saying what you think. Assertive is expressing yourself clearly and confidently. And aggressive is shouting and aggression. And I'll let you read the rest of it yourselves. But I think that what is really important to notice is that you can move from passive to aggressive very quickly if you build up resentment. And going back to that Brené Brown quote of choosing discomfort over resentment, because if the resentment bubbles, it will end up exploding into aggression. So someone who has been passive, who has not said what they think, who has held back from saying no, who's held back from stating their needs, prioritizing their own needs, will get resentful and resentful and resentful, and then blow up into an explosion over something possibly quite small. And that happens a lot in our personal lives, and we try and be better behaved street angels in our work lives, but sometimes it can make us just hate our job when we needn't have hated our job if we actually stood up to our boss, our superiors, and said, look, this is what I need, this is what I want, and made a case for ourselves with assertiveness rather than being passive, saying, oh, they're not treating me properly here, and then eventually getting, oh, well, I hate this job, I'm going to leave. So if we can get into that middle place of assertiveness and figure out our needs, prioritize our needs, say no to what we actually think is too much to take on, and then communicate that clearly, firmly, gracefully, and really calmly, it's in a much better place to be. So looking at that middle column, an assertive person is expressing themselves clearly, speaking openly and honestly. And I think one part of this as well is that if you kind of think of something and how you feel, and then you filter it and don't say it to other people, then you're really pushing it down, and that will bubble up into aggression and resentment. So in as polite and appropriate a way as possible, I think it's always better to state your case rather than push it down and not let other people know maybe that you're dissatisfied with the situation or that things need some work. So speaking firmly, maintaining eye contact, all of these things. And another thing about saying no is that if we look at this thing about believing your own needs don't matter, being passive, then aggressive is believing that your needs are most important. So it's key looking into that selfish thing here, that you're afraid of saying no and being seen as selfish or not a team player. If you believe that you need to produce the best quality work you can, and that saying no will help you do that, which is ultimately better for the team or for the company, then saying no is a good thing. So in on the assertive level here, you are taking your needs into account, but you're also taking the needs of your company and clients into account, because if you do good work, better for everyone. So saying no to taking on too much work is better for everyone also. And it's not being selfish or uncooperative. It's being realistic and setting boundaries around that. So I think this is a very powerful slide, and I do hope afterwards that if you get the slide sent out to you, please do take another look at it and reflect on it for a while, because we'll have to move on now. But I think there's a lot in this that I've barely scratched the surface of, and I hope that you will see people in it as well as you look at it yourselves. So I'm going to move on to the types of no's now, and these are a little toolbox that I'd like to give you. And there are just various different ways you can work around saying no to people. So my favorite one, I think, is the title, is the Kate Moss no, which Kate Moss famously apparently said one time that her kind of motto in life is never complain, never explain. So she was always, turned up to work on time, didn't give out about the conditions, and then never explain. It's like did whatever she wanted, but never explained why, or never really talked to the press or made excuses for herself. So it's a very direct and unapologetic no. The Kate Moss no to me is just no, and not really giving an explanation. And I always think of this as well in terms of, if you're late for work, and some people will come in and come up with all these apologies, whereas I believe in the Kate Moss approach is like, hi, sorry, I'm late. End of story, sit down, start work. So I think that sometimes you can be a little bit enigmatic, and that's okay. You don't need to explain everything to everyone. You don't need to give all your reasons all the time. And some of us do tend to overcompensate for saying no by going into this long diatribe about why and what we've got to do, blah, 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 blah. No one's interested. They just want you to do the thing for them or not, really. And they don't really care once you've said no. So sometimes a simple no is enough. Maybe sorry no if you're being nice, but then another one that is a very useful no is the realistic expectation no, which also known as the veiled threat. So basically, say someone says, oh, would you mind doing this project here? And you could be like, I could do that for you, but then, you know, I actually have a deadline of 5 o'clock today to get this thing finished. So if I do this thing for you, then I won't be able to do that other thing that I was supposed to have done for 5. So the veiled threat / realistic expectation is, I already have a project that I'm working on that has a deadline. If I do this other thing, that won't happen in the time you wanted it to happen. So this is a very kind of going to your boss or superior or manager and saying, you can't keep piling things on. This needs to be done. This already is happening. This already has a deadline. And realistically, this is the amount of work I can do in that deadline. So it's pushing it back on them and going, look, you have to kind of set a boundary, and this is what's happening. And I mean, I can say yes, but it's no to something else. So it's not yes to everything, but it's yes to one thing. So it's no to something, and they can choose which they want to say no to. Another kind of no in a similar vein to that is the negotiation no. So you were kind of like, I could do that thing, but you better make it worth my while. So, you know, sometimes in a work setting that'd be like, well, I can do that for you, but can I have next Tuesday off to get my hair done or whatever? So a negotiation no is kind of a, you can also use it in that what you're asking for is so outlandish that they'll never say yes to it. So you feel better about saying no. So you could say, I will do this for you, but I'm very busy at the moment and I couldn't take on any more work unless you're paying me €1 million to do it. So they're like, that's only worth €500,000. You're fine. So you can use the negotiation no to either push for something you want and then eventually do the thing, or else go, look, it's going to take so much to do that thing that I don't think it's worth your while getting me to do this thing. A flattery no then is really important. Sometimes, you know, if you get asked to do something and sometimes just buttering someone up and saying, oh, thank you, really appreciate you thinking of me. So I love what you're doing. I love your work. I'd love to be involved and it's brilliant, but I just don't have the time right now. So it's really good to just, you know, saying no is disappointing to someone possibly. Letting someone down gently, buttering them up, let them walk away with a smile on their face and let them think that you really appreciate them, you really respect them, that you really value what they do, and you were very disappointed not to be able to be a part of it or do something with them. But ultimately, sometimes you just don't have the time or you have something else on, whatever it is. But it's important to add a bit of flattery no into a lot of no's, because I think that especially if it's something that maybe you would like to do in the future, really don't have the time for right now, letting someone know how genuinely interested you are in it will possibly make them ask you again. And I think it's a big fear for a lot of us is that if we say no to an opportunity, that opportunity won't come around again. And if we can't do a job for someone, especially as freelancers, they won't come back and ask you the next time. So we're tempted to just take every job possible and go, oh, look, if I say no, they'll never ask me again. So making sure that the person who's asked you is really aware that you would like to work with them, you would like to do it, but you actually just can't right now is very important sometimes. Then the fake empathy no, or the real empathy no, is that you're really letting them know that you understand their needs, that you understand that maybe they need someone else on a team on a project, or you understand they need a favor, and that it's not that you are unsympathetic to their needs, but that you have your own needs. So sometimes you might not really empathize with their needs. So that's why I put fake in brackets. I forgot the second bracket there, excuse me. But the empathy no just lets them know that you are aware that they need help, and it's not that you're being lazy or uncooperative, that you're not avoiding working as a team or something like that. It's that you just have to say no. So really overly emphasizing, you understand their needs, you understand what they're asking of you, and you understand why they're asking it of you, shows people that you do care and you're not saying no out of laziness or spite or whatever they might think it could be, but that you have to. So sometimes it's important to get this through as well. Another one is that if you're asked to do something you don't want to do, then come up with a better idea. I used to work with someone who said this phrase one time, and we used to laugh with them for it, but it was, don't come to me with problems, come to me with solutions. And especially when it comes to upper levels of management, people are busy and you are employed by them to solve a problem for them. You're employed by them to do something so they don't have to do it themselves, essentially. Whether that's your client, manager, whatever it is. Someone is giving you money, they want you to do something so they don't have to do it. So don't come to them going, oh, I can't do this thing. Come to them with a better idea if you can. So the let's do this instead no is, don't want to do that, not going to do that, but let's do this instead. And people will always value if you come to them with a better idea than what they have said. And even if it's a better idea that just suits you better, but if you can sell it to them as a better idea, then they'll much prefer that than a negative, oh, no, I don't want to do it, or shouting down their idea or saying that what they want to do isn't a good idea. Come up with something that's really appealing and really attractive that they can run with instead. Another no is the inquiring no, which is that maybe there's someone else on the team who could help you with this, or oh, isn't that person really, really good at digital marketing? Maybe they could do all the Instagram posts instead of me, or something like that. So an inquiring no is kind of subtly suggesting something else, and it's the kind of a make them think it was their idea no. And then finally, the broken record no is no, 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 no. And sometimes this is what it takes. Sometimes people will badger you and badger you and badger you, and you just have to hold the firm line. And in fact, usually what I would do in a workshop setting at this point is pair people off into pairs and then get people to say no to each other. So I do find that it is quite like people get elated after doing it, and at first it can be really awkward and kind of like, oh, I don't want to say no to this person. But there's a little bit of a buzz that comes with saying no a lot. And I think that in a real life setting, I notice in workshops people kind of laugh and giggle after doing it. But in a real life setting, I think that when you, and if we went back to that assertiveness slide setting, when you actually say no, calmly, clearly, state your case and set your boundaries, you feel happy in yourself after it, and you feel good about being realistic about other people's expectations of you as well. And people know that you're not a doormat. So I was going to ask one of the lovely ladies from Iconic to do a little demonstration with me. I don't know if she can come on. Do I need to stop slide sharing maybe to do this?
Oh no, I'm on here now.
Or are you just going to say no to doing this?
I'm going to, yeah, no.
So what I was going to do is ask you, will I stop screen sharing so you can be up on screen?
If you want, I think when I speak, I should pop up on people's screen.
Great. So I'm just going to ask you a really stupid question, and I'm going to keep badgering you for a minute, and you just keep saying no, if that's okay. You can say yes to this bit, but no every question.
Yeah, okay, that's okay.
Okay, so would you mind if I come and stay at your house next week, maybe for the week, and bring my pet Rottweiler with me?
No, you can't.
Great. Like, I really need to. I've nowhere else to stay in Dublin, and it's so awkward. Like, I don't want to stay in a hotel because of COVID.
No, not the Rottweiler.
Bring him because I actually have to bring him for an operation in the veterinary hospital in UCD, and it's going to have to be overnight. So we've a really early start in the morning.
No, I'm sorry. I have a dog here that lives white.
Oh, no, but he's really friendly, and he's lovely, and he loves other dogs.
No.
I live in Kerry, so I can't drive up for we have to be in at the hospital for 6 in the morning, and I can't drive up. Like, I'll have to get up in the middle of the night. I really need to stay in Dublin the night before.
Not in my house, no.
You're having a little giggle there, and I know, like it's I was like pulling at the heartstrings there. Well, maybe you don't feel that much sympathy towards a Rottweiler, but I always find this happens is people start laughing when they're saying it, and I think one part of that. Do you feel uncomfortable?
A little bit, yeah.
But also, the more you say no, do you feel a bit happy that you've said no?
Yeah, I feel more like set in my, like, I'm like, I can't go back now. I have to keep going now. It builds your confidence, I guess, yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it, what it brings up for you? Because I think definitely at the start, laughing can be an uncomfortable thing.
Yeah.
Also, do you feel the little bit powerful?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it definitely helps.
That's the result I wanted. So I know on a webinar like this, we can't really get everyone to kind of pair off and do that. It'll just be kind of dead air for a while. So I think if we do have a little bit of time at the end, you know, if people have any questions, be happy to take them definitely now. But I would really encourage you to just do that little exercise, and really actually the slide about assertiveness, when we send that around later, have a good look at that, and then also try and do that little exercise with someone and just see what it brings up, and ask yourself, first of all, you know, what it brings up when you think about saying no. Do you feel those things that we talked about, like lazy or uncooperative? What fear do you have around saying no? And then do the exercise and see how you feel at the start when you're a little bit uncomfortable with saying no, and see how you feel at the end when someone's badgered you and you've held firm, and see if you really feel a bit better and stronger and a bit more powerful. Thank you so much, everyone. It's going to be a while before my next webinar. I'm going to be doing one at the end of the month, so I'll miss you guys for the month. I'll be back on the 31st of October, I think, which is on how to get what you want in meetings, which everybody loves that topic. So I'm looking forward to delving into that a bit further. And thank you so much. It's been great talking to you today. Bye.